Well, hello there, my wunderbar patients. This is the DrJoeystein, and this is my first video game video... Video game? Yes, my first video game video review. Well now, this is gonna be interesting. For those of you that have just stumbled upon my channel, I welcome you with open arms, in a completely non-creepy way. I'm another gamer that's set out on the rarely traveled road of posting videos on YouTube related to video games, such as Let's Plays, reviews, and whatnot. And although I won't be able to update this channel with new videos as often as I would like to, I hope you'll stick along with whatever I got planned for the future, because it is going to be a decent, alright, probably the best. And for those of you that are wondering why I call my audience my patients, it's because I'm DrJoeystein, a doctor, so it only makes sense that you get the point. Anyway, the game in question that I'm reviewing is The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning, which was released in 2006, published by Sierra Entertainment, and developed by Chrome Studios, I don't know how you pronounce it. But you may be asking, well, DrJoeystein, why are you covering such a mainstream, relevant game for your first ever video game review? But in all seriousness, there are two reasons why. One, I just finished an entire Let's Play on the game, which you can check out in the description if you want. And the second reason why is because I am to put it lightly, a major fan of the Spyro games made by Insomniac Games. You could say they were my childhood. They get all of my yes. And the second reason is also why I even started playing The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning, because I embarked on a quest to find a whole bunch of Spyro games that I missed out on when I was a kid. I mean, I remember playing Enter the Dragonfly and A Hero's Tale, but for some reason I do not recall finishing those games. I don't recall selling them, so I must have not enjoyed them. I don't know. But like I said, I stumbled upon the Legend of Spyro trilogy earlier this summer, with some interesting results along the way. Okay, Bro. Wait. What? No! I actually bought all 3 games, and I've recently finished A New Beginning. Now I would like to review it. So did this game manage to breathe an underappreciated yet invigorating fire back into the Spyro franchise, or was it truly a mediocre attempt to rekindle the former glory Spyro had during the PS1 era? Well, don't worry. You're about to find out. One last thing before I begin, though. Like my longer review, which you can find in the description below as well, I segmented certain aspects of the game for the sake of talking about the gameplay, the audio, graphics, and so forth individually to talk about them in more depth. Bah, but enough of that hush-push nonsense. Let's get the show on the road. First, we'll be starting out with the gameplay. Unlike the platforming, simple combat mini-games of the Spyro the Dragon games, Legend of Spyro establishes itself as a combat-centered game with A New Beginning, which is reminiscent to God of War or the PS4 game Knack. It's surprisingly difficult at first, in a good kind of way, requiring a learning curve to master all of the new moves and abilities like a strafing/targeting technique, a melee attack, 4 kinds of breaths that Spyro can use, which are fire, electricity, ice, and earth, super moves called fury attacks, and combos. Whereas the Spyro the Dragon games only had really 4 buttons you would use during fighting and whatnot, this game is definitely more complex. What's also different is that Spyro has a health bar and mana bar, but what is a mana bar, you may ask? It indicates how much you can use your breaths. And yes, both of the bars can be replenished with gems spread throughout the levels, which don't act as currency in this Spyro game. However, there are light blue gems you accrue over time that can be used to upgrade Spyro's breath powers in significant ways. Fire, for example, can be upgraded to increase in damage and send enemies running around flailing as you hammer them with melee attacks. There are also secondary abilities the breaths have if you press triangle, which, with fire again, sends out a concentrated ball of flame that explodes like a grenade. The ice breath sends out a flurry of slush that freezes smaller enemies and slows down bigger guys, but can also be used from a distance by shooting sharp icicles. The breaths are just very cool and fun to use during combat, and getting the hang of how to manage them and all the moves feels great. But even these things cannot save the game from one thing: repetition. Just about 90 to even 95% of the game is going from area to area and fighting enemy after enemy with little to keep the experience engaging. I mean, just look at this. Here's the first wave. Then another. Then another.
Where is it going to end?
It is over! Praise the Lord! Oh. Sure, there are a couple neat flying sequences, but the platforming is pretty boring and there are no side missions or secrets to find. From beginning to end, the game is a purely linear experience due to its level design and A-to-B objective mentality. It may have solid action-oriented gameplay, but it almost becomes a chore to do before the game is halfway through. There's nothing to break up the inevitable monotony that sets in. Moving on now, the audio, as a whole, is good. The sound effect of Spyro tail-slapping, head-butting, and slamming his way through enemies sound fine, and the ambience of the environment is pleasing to listen to during what little downtime there is in the game. Except there's this weird sound Spyro makes when climbing an obstacle. I mean, he normally sounds like this.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Does that mean what I think it does?
Yeah, we've got to help him.
And then he sounds like this. The heck is that? That is not Spyro. I'm on to you! But other than that use of Scripe, the sound effects get the job done. Now, the voice acting... I mean, you got a cast of celebrities like Commissioner Gordon, Frodo Baggins, and Emperor Cusco backing up prominent characters like Nidus, Spyro, and Sparks. All of them have moments of excellent voice acting, especially Gary Oldman, but Elijah Wood, being the most important character to the story, falls flat with his performance at times.
Yes, my name is Spyro, and you must be Terrador.
Yes I am.
All the other characters are a hit and miss with their voice acting, mostly a hit, but overall, I liked it. The star-studded cast may not have been perfect, but they pulled off their roles adequately.
You were incredible, Ignitus. Can you show me how to do that?
Patience, young dragon. Soon enough you'll learn all I have to teach. But right now, you must fight.
The orchestral choir-driven soundtrack is surprisingly good too, which has a few songs that really caught my attention. This is especially true for tracks that play during relaxing moments in the game, like walking around in the Dragon Temple or when there's no combat. There's also a lovely song in the main menu that has beautiful vocals, good use of strings, and a tone that hints toward the duality of the themes of the story, being lighthearted and dark at the same time. Overall, I'm satisfied with the soundtrack and like how it accompanies the varying scenarios and environments in the game. The graphics, simply put, are pretty amazing for a PlayStation 2 title. Like most Spyro games, there are a multitude of beautiful, fantastical environments portrayed with a sharp, vibrant, colorful art style. Although there aren't as many places to explore as in past games, you get to dig into what is presented for a longer amount of time. The first levels you traverse compose the area surrounding Spyro's home. He lives with dragonflies, so, as you can imagine, there are lots of flora and vegetation around. Giant orange mushrooms and green hills can be seen all around you, and this is where I began to notice the creative, fantastical aesthetics throughout the game. On the journey, you'll find a jungle floating on giant rocks in the sky, an ancient dragon temple in ruin, and gloomy castle grounds surrounding a once proud yet evil kingdom of warriors. The settings just look wonderful, and the graphical fidelity of the game is impressive for its time. The character models are detailed and expressive with movement, except with the faces on occasion. There's very little texture poppin', even in wide areas covering a lot of ground. Colors of the rainbow abound everywhere in the environments, but do not come across as overbearing, and the elements of Spyro's breaths, such as fire, ice, and electricity, are visually powerful and, well, look awesome. While I do have a problem with the strange-looking cinematic cutscenes at times, and some of the redesigned aspects of Spyro and Sparks, I mean, seriously, look at that cover art. So beautiful. But anyway, the graphics are hard to criticize as a whole. The art department should be applauded for what they did here. The story starts out with the time of war, where dragons are pitted against an army of heartless minions who are commanded by the Dark Master, an unholy, mysterious villain, to wipe out all dragons. He practically succeeds in accomplishing this goal due to his overwhelming forces, and eventually sends his minions to the Dragon Temple, where dragon eggs are being held. Ignitus, a Dragon Master of Fire, has been tasked to protect them, but since the Dark Master's forces ambushed his place one unsuspecting night, he only had time to take one of the eggs and send it down a nearby river. Knowing this dragon would reach someone's care, he went back to fight with his brethren. Over time, an intimidating dragon named Cinder took command of the Dark Master's armies and captured the remaining Dragon Masters, bringing ruin wherever she went. Meanwhile, the egg did find its home with the Dragonfly family, who raised the dragon that hatched from it as one of their own. They named him Spyro. As he grew alongside his brother Sparks, one day he discovered he could breathe fire. His parents told him he wasn't a dragonfly, but a creature from a ravaged race. Therefore, Spyro set out on a journey to find his true family and manages to find Ignitus living as a hermit, hiding away from civilization since he avoided being imprisoned by Cinder. When he lays his eyes on Spyro, he realizes he is the purple dragon, who is destined to possess unspeakable power. Although hesitant, he wonders if Spyro could save his fellow Dragon Masters, learn from their wisdom, and defeat Cinder. Upon telling Spyro this thought, he agrees that he should attempt to do these things, so Spyro sets off on a journey that will change him forever. It's obvious that the developer intended to make this game have a more serious and darker story than any Spyro games before it, which were much less serious and complex. Take the Year of a Dragon, for example. Dragon eggs were captured, but in this game, they're outright destroyed. So baby dragons dying, kind of dark. But thankfully, this isn't a bad thing. It's an interesting direction to take considering the more playful and comedic stories of the past. And while themes like these are still present in the game, they're overshadowed by antithetical themes, such as, weighty, dark, etc. There's a grave history behind the story that profoundly impacts the protagonist's personalities and objectives, and Cinder is more devilish in her deeds and motives than past villains like Ripto or the Sorceress. Also, the origin story of Spyro is, well, cute. I think it's funny how he thought he was a dragonfly because, like in some cartoon movies, the child who doesn't know they've been adopted believes they're part of the family no matter how different they may look. Anyway, Spyro himself is different as a character too. He's much more, shall we say, modest than his past iterations. While sarcasm and humor linger, he's nobler and humbler.
Right. It's never easy, is it?
Nothing worthwhile ever is.
So now you're spouting wisdom, hero boy?
Come on.
Overall, it's a nice direction for the character. Sparks also talks now, who is constantly joking and expresses forms of vanity and cowardice.
Worship. Okay, now that's what I'm talking about.
Although I sort of preferred his silence in the past, I'm indifferent to how they've changed him for the purpose of a story. The other dragons are also a fun and interesting bunch who banter back and forth with amusing results.
With my help, rescuing Pterodor should be a certainty.
Your pomposity, arrogance, and pretentiousness is odious to the extreme.
Shall we?
The story also ends on a fairly surprising note, which serves as an enticing reason to return to see what happens in the next game. But as for the game at hand, A New Beginning manages to pull off an adequate start to The Legend of Spyro, with a straightforward story that has a mostly entertaining cast of characters and dark themes that are handled well. When it comes to the replay value, there's absolutely nothing else to do once the game is complete. Nothing. Clocking in at around 5 to 7 hours of total playtime, there are no secrets to find afterwards or during the game, no extra modes to delve into, or a reason to return to the game a second time. I remember putting hours into the Spyro the Dragon games to get all the dragon eggs, beat my last record of flying through a series of rings, perform as many flips and turns as I could skateboarding. Yeah, skateboarding. You just name it. The replay value for A New Beginning is non-existent, and it's shorter than the Spyro the Dragon games despite having a tighter story to tell. Very disappointing, and the reason why the game is prolonged to 7 hours is because a lot of the combat acts as filler, which only adds insult to injury. So, in conclusion, what do I give the game? Well, I give The Legend of Spyro A New Beginning a 6 out of 10. I went into the game with skepticism, but at the same time, I really thought I would end up loving it. That did not happen for the most part. The action-oriented gameplay is solid, the voice acting and music are excellent at times, and the story is a nice beginning to this franchise reboot. However, the one-dimensional gameplay becomes cyclic and monotonous. The linearity of a level design feels constraining and shows a lack of depth in the game. The overall audio, while satisfactory, fails to stand out as truly memorable, and the replay value is just not there. The game rises above the mediocrity of Enter the Dragonfly and A Hero's Tale, but it fails to reach the heights and depth of Insomniac Games' original trilogy of Spyro games. It's by no means a bad game, it's just slightly above average due to its execution. In other words, there's some genuinely good qualities in and underlying potential for the game and what it could have been, but its problems hamper it down from excellence. Well, that's a wrap. My first ever video game video review. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you could, I would really appreciate some feedback in the comments, like, did you like the presentation? Do you like how I covered my points? Do you happen to agree with what I said about the game, or did you vehemently spit in disgust at what I said? Let me know in the comments below. And, as always, thank you very much for watching.